medieval weapons used in World War I. Chainmail, catapults, and spiked clubs, all common weapons used hundreds of years ago in countless battles and engagements, had long been forgotten when Europe erupted into conflict in 1914. The early 20th century saw many new inventions that were intended to improve people's living conditions, such as vacuum cleaners, air conditioning, and electric washing machines. But there were also many new developments in the methods that people could use to kill one another. Chemicals such as chlorine gas and mustard gas, coupled with widespread use of new weapons such as the machine gun, made combat a living nightmare for soldiers on both sides of the conflict. Perhaps even more harrowing than the progression towards these new weapons was the regression back towards the basic weapons from the past. In stark contrast to the advancing technology of the 20th century, many soldiers who were stuck in the close corridors of trench warfare found themselves back in the medieval era. Hand-to-hand combat became commonplace in the suffocating atmosphere of the trenches. Blunt weapons, swords, and knives replaced bayonets, which were too long to properly maneuver in confined spaces. Everywhere, soldiers spent their free time fashioning these crude instruments to address the obstacles of fighting in a trench. Here are 5 ways the Great War brought back the medieval period. The Leech Trench Catapult. Invented by Claude Pemberton Leech in response to the German Wurfmaschine, which was a spring-powered instrument that could launch a hand grenade 220 yards, the trench catapult was used by British divisions in 1915. Officially, it was known as the Leech Trench Catapult after its inventor. This device was produced in central London by the Gamages department store. The design was cheap and easy to make as it consisted of a Y-shaped frame and rubber bands pulled tight with a windlass. The catapult could be activated by releasing the hook catch and firing a projectile between 120 and 150 yards across no man's land into the enemy trenches. In all, 150 catapults were made, and each division received 20 of them. Although the weapon would be quickly replaced by the French Sauterelle A catapult at the end of 1915, and then by the Stokes mortar and the rifle grenade launcher in March 1916, the Leech Trench Catapult was effective at lobbing projectiles, mainly grenades, into the enemy trenches. One element of trench warfare that plagued soldiers was the inability to safely stand up in the trench. Snipers in the opposing trench lines eagerly waited for the signs of life to aim at. But with the introduction of trench catapults, soldiers no longer had to stand up to throw grenades at the enemy. Instead, men could take cover inside the trench and aim the catapult to fire at the enemy without exposing themselves to enemy sniper fire.
My lords and ladies, bow to your king of history.
If you'd like to be considered for the royal court, it is your responsibility to become a trusted advisor who can lead our kingdom in the right direction, navigating both the battlefield and political minefields alike. As king, I rely on my advisors to tell me which merchants are selling the finest robes, what lands need pillaging, and where to take my armies out to dinner next. My last advisor tried to sell me out, but when I'm playing Knights of Honor 2 Sovereign, I can rewrite the past in real time, applying strategies and tactics that could have changed the course of history and kept my family on the throne throughout the Middle Ages. I don't have time to fuss with confusing controls, not when I'm already balancing my armies, merchants, spies, and royal court. That's why I love how accessible Knights of Honor 2 is. With it, I can focus on strategy and see my results play out in real time. In an immersive world I can get right in the middle of, like I am right now.
Anyone can be a king with this exciting new real-time strategy game from THQ Nordic, whether you're a newcomer or legacy kingmaker. Join your friends with multiplayer mode to take on challenges across medieval Europe and grow your power and influence in a strategy game that lets you decide your own royal legacy. Take control of medieval Europe, Knights of Honor 2, now available on PC. The Morning Star Trench Club. Unlike other World War I weapons that were mass-produced in factories, trench clubs and other blunt objects were the products of a soldier's creativity. To occupy their time, many of them began making crude weapons such as the spiked club, known as a morning star, to protect themselves in the event that hand-to-hand combat broke out. The object of these weapons was to incapacitate or kill enemy soldiers quickly and silently. Many times, trench raids carried out at night relied on the stealthy nature of these blunt weapons to give the attacking force an element of surprise. The Morning Star was made of a wooden handle with a spiked ball fitted at the striking end. This weapon was first seen on the battlefield at the beginning of the 14th century and is most often associated with German knights, who called it Morgenstern. Throughout the centuries, the weapon retained its sinister reputation as an effective, evil-looking killing instrument. Other variants of the weapon include a chain or piece of leather attaching the spiked ball to the handle. This allowed the striking end to be swung at the opponent and is classified as a flail. Medieval flails and morning stars in World War I are terrifying reminders of the desperation that characterized the Great War. The Splatter Mask. With the reintroduction of these primitive weapons on World War I battlefields, each side sought ways to protect their soldiers from shrapnel and other debris. One innovative new piece of armor that was introduced at this time was the Splatter Mask. These masks were designed to be worn by tank crews and protected the faces of the men from spall and red-hot splinters ricocheting around. These occur when a tank is hit by a projectile, and the shock waves on the inside send these pieces of shrapnel flying through the air, ripping through flesh and can blind crew members. In addition to this, tanks of the era were painted with lead paint, which also broke off in the shockwave and could harm the crew. Splatter masks minimized the effects of spalling by using the ancient technique of chainmail to cover the nose and mouth of its user. The chainmail would protect the wearer's face from small debris and lead paint in the air. Below the chainmail, a full-face leather mask helped cover the eyes and forehead, with metal eye covers allowing the soldier to see out of the mask. These masks and chainmail face guards were used in conjunction with helmets, usually attached to it with a strap, ensuring that the whole head and face was covered. Although the aesthetic look of the mask is rather eerie, its function as a face covering saved many soldiers from disfigurement. American body armor. The Brewster Body Shield, designed by Dr. Guy Otis Brewster, was heavy body armor made out of metal and capable of stopping .303 British bullets. To prove its capabilities, he gave a demonstration to the U.S. Army. Soldiers were ordered to fire live rounds of ammunition at the body armor while Dr. Brewster himself was wearing it, and it was found that not a single bullet had penetrated the armor. Furthermore, Brewster claimed that the impact of the bullets was nothing compared to what he had prepared himself for, and the impact he experienced was just a fraction of what he was actually expecting. While this demonstration was impressive, the Army quickly realized that the Brewster body shield, consisting of just a chest and headpiece, weighed over 40 pounds, and this meant that soldiers wearing it would be very restricted moving around and running on the battlefield. Also, the headpiece section was not able to turn on its own, leaving the soldier with almost no peripheral vision. Another idea was then presented for trials called the Sentinel, which resembled the armor worn by soldiers in the 15th century. Apart from the helmet, there was a heavy breastplate, 2 waist plates, and a further 2 plates that covered the thighs. This was complemented by sponge rubber padding underneath. They soon realized that this caused too much of a strain on the soldier's back and shoulders, but it was thought that if they added a back plate and removed the 2 thigh plates, it would be ideal for machine gunners, especially to protect their torsos. Fortunately for them, it never got beyond the trial stage and the idea was shelved. Nevertheless, these inventions indicate that many countries were beginning to better understand the importance of metal helmets and effective body armor. Most casualties during the Great War were attributed to shrapnel hitting men in the chest and head, so addressing that problem would save many lives in the future. The Mark I Trench Knife. The Mark I trench knife is an American-made weapon designed by officers of the American Expeditionary Force. It's characterized by its 17.1 centimeter or 6 3/4 inch double edge that makes it both effective in slashing and thrusting attacks. The handle is made out of cast bronze, although it was chemically blackened and resembles a knuckle duster in the way each finger has an individual hole to fit through. A spike on the bow of each knuckle made it difficult for enemy soldiers to grab onto the knife in hand-to-hand combat. It's the result of numerous field tests and extensive research into different designs of trench knives. In 1918, a panel of AEF officers looked at the standard issue knives across European countries and measured how effective they were in the following criteria: security of grip, ease of carrying when crawling, and quickness of deployment in action. The Mark I trench knife is therefore presented as having the best qualities of each trench knife that was available at the time. In particular, the double-edged blade was taken directly from the French trench knife, Couteau Poignard MLE 1916. Interestingly, the knife was not widely used in World War I as its production started at the end of the war. The trench knife saw increased use in World War II among troops that had a need for close combat weapons. It received mixed reviews from soldiers returning from World War II, but its ability to combine all the best features from other knives ensures its place in history. New innovations in the 20th century may have pushed warfare towards deadlier and more destructive battles, but it simultaneously brought the desperation of close combat back into consideration. Everywhere, soldiers had to adapt to the new style of trench warfare and use what was at hand to create weapons that were effective at close range. It took some years for the industrial production to catch up to the needs of the front line, which had opened the door for a return to the medieval era, a return to catapults, chainmail, and clubs.